Well, welcome back to the Human Reboot Project. Today we are talking to someone who embodies the very essence of a reboot. Meet Steph Lightfoot. She's a cancer exercise specialist and coach, a British expat living in the French Alps, and a mother of twins. But more than that, she is a force of nature. After being diagnosed with breast cancer in 2021, Steph didn't just survive, she redefined what recovery looks like. From walking laps around her house during the darkest days of chemotherapy to cycling 100 kilometers just 3 weeks after her final chemo treatment, she used movement as her medicine. Today, she's here to share how she helps others navigate the new normal and reclaim their confidence, strength, and identity after a diagnosis. Please welcome the unstoppable Steph Lightfoot. Steph,
Wow.
how you doing?
Hi, Jay. That is quite an introduction.
Yeah, well, yeah, I like to hype it, So I only have
Yeah, right.
I only have the best and
I'm
most
quite
exciting
normal, really.
guests. So yeah, no, you're amazing. And that's one of the reasons that I invited you onto the podcast is I've been following you on Instagram for a while, which led me to click over to your coaching webpage, and I just really appreciated how you laid it out bare bones and what you had been through and what you were trying to accomplish as a cancer coach and a fitness coach. So I just appreciate you taking some time from your vacation out in the middle of the Atlantic in some remote little island and just joining us today. So thank you so much.
Oh, no, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. So where to begin? We've already laid out the fact that you had a cancer diagnosis, but maybe before we talk about that, you talk a little bit about why you were in the Alps as an expat from England, and then we'll take it from there.
No problem. Okay, so as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm British, and I've been living in the French Alps for nearly 30 years, which makes me sound very old. And basically, I finished university and didn't really know what to do with myself, and a friend suggested that I go and do a ski season because I quite enjoyed skiing. So off I went, and it wasn't really a ski season, it was a drinking, partying season, but a little part of me fell in love with the mountains and the culture, and it was very, very different from my upbringing in London. And then I went back to London to start a proper job in a bank, which for people who know me are like, what? Say what? That doesn't add up. But basically I couldn't stick it. So I fairly quickly quit my job and ran back to the Alps, and that was it. I haven't really looked back since. And initially it was all about the skiing and the partying and having fun. And then I fell in love with the summer in the Alps, which I think a lot of people do. There's an expression that people arrive for the winter and they stay for the summer. And if you haven't been, it's beautiful, it's magical, and there is so much to do. And I'd always been a runner, like a little bit, kind of dabbling, with recreational running. And then I discovered trail running. And over time, I discovered that I was quite good at it. I'm inherently extremely stubborn and determined. And endurance sports is a mental game, as I'm sure you know. And I deep dived into the world of trail running, and I was, running a lot and competing a lot. And that was my life for a long time. Yeah. So that's, I've run my way around the world, I guess, mainly in the Alps, but I've been over to not very far from your neck of the woods and run across the Rockies. So
Cool. Yeah, I was going to say when we were talking about how you showed up at the Alps for what you thought was a season, and you're now almost 30 years into being in there. I think I live here in Colorado, and I think that's about how half the population has arrived in Colorado as they came to be a lifty for the winter or maybe a raft guide, and then in a blink of an eye, 20 years have passed, and they've been living their best life doing what they love. So good for you for realizing that banking was not near as exciting as running through the Alps.
Yeah, I'm not quite looking back. I'm not quite sure what I was thinking. I think I liked the idea of like wearing a suit and heels to work, and that was about it. Which is again a million miles from my day-to-day life now.
Yeah. Well, how did so you said that it doesn't sound like you maybe didn't do a lot of sports when you were in school, and you sort of had dabbled in and maybe just running like a lot of people do, and then you just sort of stumbled into like the fact that you were actually really good at going and further. Is that about right? Or were you always an athlete, just maybe in like team sports?
I was never really an athlete. I was a gymnast until I was about 13, 14. That was my passion. And then, puberty hit and school exams and discovered boys and partying and all that stuff. So there was kind of a pause on my like athlete career. But I guess I've always had a fairly strong connection with my physical self. And, I discovered quite young that movement is essential for me. I think as much as anything else for mental health. I've always I can remember my dad being astonished when I was like 8, 11 or 12. I was like, Dad, I want to walk to school. And it was quite a long way, with like my rucksack full of books and whatever. But I really needed that movement and that disconnect between home life and school life, and then school life and home life. And it kept me really grounded. And then I probably started running when I was like 14, 15, and going to the gym and, doing 90s fitness classes, like step classes and, stuff like that. So I guess I've always been active, but it wasn't really until I moved to the mountains that I got massively into it. And then in my early 30s, I discovered, I had run my own business, and then I had been very fortunate that I sold that business, and I found myself in a position where I could afford to take a bit of time off. And I decided to pursue a passion, which was to discover more about the human body and sport. And I spent a few years completely retraining and basically collecting qualifications in the health and fitness sector, and from then on, that's where I've worked, since from my early 30s until now. I've been coaching and fitness training and collecting different knowledge and different qualifications, and I suppose that's followed my own path in that initially I started off really mainly working with runners, and then I recognized the need for having a really strong core and doing strength and conditioning work and having good mobility and flexibility, so I sort of added that to my interests, and then I went through an IVF journey. So for my own interest, I got into kind of pregnancy fitness and then postpartum fitness. And then when our kids, we've got twins, and when they were 3.5 is when I got diagnosed with cancer. And it's actually thanks to my oncologist that I discovered this whole world of exercise oncology that I would never have known really existed, and the power of exercise for cancer patients. So yeah, through him I got introduced to exercise oncology, and then I've taken my studies and qualifications further, and that is now my world and my passion.
Yeah.
And my career.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, you're my second guest that's had a cancer diagnosis and twins.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But you're my first overseas guest, so you've got one up on them.
I think there's not a link.
Yeah. So it seems to be like though, like a lot of people who you start with this sort of baseline interest in fitness, just, I'm just going to go out and run because I know it's good for me. And then that leads to, I really enjoy running. I should run farther because it'll be even more fun because I'm going further. And then you transition that into a career. It sounds like you went back to the university or went back and got some additional certifications. I have a feeling, though, that you weren't thinking, I'm going to go be a fitness coach so that one day I can be a cancer coach.
No.
Yeah. So as I mentioned early on, you sort of really lay it out in your on your website, cancercoach.me. You're very open about your diagnosis and all that you went through. For our folks that are listening who maybe don't want to take all the time to read all that, maybe you could just give us sort of the the recap of how you discovered you had cancer and sort of what it ended up turning into. A lot more than you expected, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, I was, mumming two small people, which for anybody who's a twin parent, it's quite sporty, as they would say in French. And, pretty busy juggling. And I was just in the shower one day and washing myself, and I felt this tiny lump in my breast, and I basically ignored it for a little bit. And then eventually I kind of clocked when I looked in the mirror that I could see that my, the skin on my breast had slightly changed and my nipple was looking a bit funny. So the next time I went to the doctor, actually for one of the kids, I mentioned it in passing. I mean, almost as I was walking out the door. And the doctor examined it and was like, I don't think this is anything to worry about because it's very movable, it felt like a little ball that could be moved around.
Sure.
And so that, in theory, is not actually a worry. It's more likely to be a cyst. But she said, go and get it scanned and checked anyway. So I then went and got it scanned, and basically they sent me away because it was too small to biopsy. So they sent me away for like 3 months to let it grow until it was big enough to be able to biopsy. I mean, I had, like a lot of long distance runners, I'm pretty lean and I had very small breasts. So I guess I was able to feel something that, had my breasts been bigger, I probably wouldn't have actually felt.
Right.
So anyway, so I had 3 months where I kind of, had to put it to the back of my mind. And then I went and had another mammogram and a biopsy. And, by this point I could see the faces in the clinic. And, it was quite clear that there was something going on. So I guess I knew, and I guess it wasn't a huge surprise when I got a phone call almost exactly 4 years ago saying, yeah, your biopsy results have come back and it's we found cancerous cells. So then, as you know, you get on the kind of runaway cancer train. And initially it looked like it was going to be fairly straightforward. I was offered all my different surgery options, and I managed to find, I ended up having to get a second opinion because I wanted to not have reconstruction and to have a double mastectomy, which is a fairly unusual choice. But as an athlete, that's what felt right to me. And as a mum, I wanted the kind of the quickest, least risk surgery, quickest recovery. And, my breasts had been so small, I was like, that's not going to make a huge amount of difference to be flat chested. So that was a kind of initial hurdle that needed to be navigated because it wasn't a very classic choice. Most people go for some kind of reconstruction. But it looked like at that point, it was all going to be fairly straightforward. It was, surgery. They were like, you maybe need radiotherapy, but maybe not. We might get away with it depending on what the pathology is after the surgery. And you'll probably have to go on to some kind of hormone therapy. So initially I was like, okay, 2 months, this will be done. I can just kind of move on with my life and forget about it. And then unfortunately they take, for breast cancer patients, they take what's called the sentinel nodes, which are under your arms. And it's kind of where the lymph system is kind of like the gatekeepers, the lymphatic system. And unfortunately, when I got my pathology back, it transpired that the cancer had already spread into my lymph nodes, which was totally unexpected because it hadn't shown up on the scans.
Interesting.
So then I was fast tracked into chemotherapy. It was literally like, here's the news, tomorrow you're going to have a port fitted, 2 days later you're going to be in your first chemotherapy. It happens very, very quickly, almost before you've had any kind of processing time. I'm sat in the chemo chair with for the first time, and I'd made the decision to shave my head. And I basically came bowling out of this meeting with the oncologist, and I'm like, right, I need to get my eyebrows tattooed and I need to get my head shaved, and okay, what sort of support system do I need to put in place? So it all happened very quickly. And I spent 6 months having chemotherapy, the first half of which was pretty aggressive. The type of cancer that I had was deemed aggressive, and I think as a relatively young cancer patient and as a mother, they throw everything at it to, make sure I wasn't really given much choice. It was like, we're going to win this. So I did 6 months of chemotherapy and then 5 weeks of radiotherapy. And then I had my ovaries removed because my particular cancer was 100% estrogen and progesterone responsive. So we wanted to do the absolute maximum to reduce my sex hormones down to almost zero. And so I was in what's called a crash menopause, which is, most women go through menopause over a period. The kind of perimenopausal sort of phase is between 5 and 10 years. So it's obviously there's lots of ups and downs in that process, but it happens over many years. Whereas if you have a crash menopause, it's like, boom, right, okay, get on. And so that's where I am. So yeah, it was a fairly intense 18 months of treatment, basically.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Something that that resonated with me that you said was when you were talking about finding the initial lump, and I'm hearing this from a lot of cancer survivors that I've been talking to that are athletes, is that I think this is just me speculating, I feel like serious athletes, whether you're amateur or professional, we're a little bit more in tuned with our bodies, and we're more prone to sort of notice something is off, whether it's a lump or just your energy levels. And it's good to hear that people don't ignore that. But I think too often people do ignore those little things that are off. And I think it's just sort of a call to action. Is like, if there's something off, talk to your doctor about it. It doesn't hurt to ask questions, and it may end up saving your life or allow you to start a treatment a lot sooner than later.
Yeah, I mean, I think I will always be grateful for my teeny tiny breasts and the fact that I was able to feel the lump, because I mean, I had probably been to the doctor about 4 times with various other symptoms, mainly like night sweats, fatigue, that kind of thing, which had been dismissed as hormonal perimenopausal symptoms, and which actually I think were my body fighting against cancer. But I will never know that, that's speculation to some extent. So but yeah, I mean, for sure, as athletes, we are definitely much more in tune with our bodies, but there's also a flip side of that, in that we're also used to suffering, and probably put up with stuff that non-athletes would be like, oh, I don't feel right, or I need to rest, or whatever. Whereas anybody who's done any kind of endurance event is just like, right, head down, get on with it.
Hopefully that's changing, right? I think more and more often I hear conversations from coaches and stuff about the importance of rest, because that's when our bodies heal. That's when they get faster. That's when they get better, hopefully, from chemo or radiation, whatever it is. So you also mentioned your lymph nodes, which, for those who don't know, we have lymph nodes under our arms, on the side of our neck, and in our groin, I believe. And I think it's about 128 lymph nodes total. And so they ended up removing your lymph nodes on either side of your arms, or underneath your arms, or just on one side?
Just on my left side, which was the cancer side. And normally what they do is they remove the sentinel nodes, which depends on the person and your physiology, but normally between kind of 6 or 12 of the ones that are under your arm. But unfortunately, in my case, what had happened, the process is that they inject a dye into your lymph system, and it diffuses through the lymph system. And basically, when the surgeon goes in, the nodes that are darkest in color, where the dye has filtered through, are the sentinel nodes, and so they know which ones to take out. But because I'm slim and I don't have enough fat to slow that diffusion process down, what had happened in my case was that when the surgeon went in, she was faced with, okay, all the nodes are coloured. I don't know which ones are the sentinel nodes. So she was obliged to take them all out, which actually, in retrospect, is good, because it means that, when they did discover that the cancer had spread, they didn't have to go back in and get more.
Right.
But it does mean that I am completely lacking a filtration system on this side. And, that puts you at risk of other things, mainly lymphedema.
I was going to ask about that. I use a device from a company called Tactile Medical. It's basically a home lymphatic massage system. Do you use something like that, or do you go to a therapist?
No, I mean, I have grade 0 lymphedema in my left arm, which means that I've had to get my ring resized, and my hand, not really my arm, I don't think, but it does occasionally swell a little. But my recipe for looking after that is actually swimming.
Okay.
With the same effect, in that basically the cool water and the kind of repetitive motion and the compression effect of the water is magical for preventing lymphedema.
I did not know that. I had heard that like weightlifting does a lot to stimulate our lymphatic system. I would assume just exercise in general. I definitely don't use my lymphatic massage device. For a while, I was using it every day, mainly out of just sheer paranoia. I thought I was going to wake up one day and just be a giant sack of swollen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've that some of that after 5 years, some of that worry has dissipated, and now I've just sort of think of it as a maintenance thing. Even if I don't see any type of pooling, I just slap it on now and then to give it a go. So
it certainly can't hurt. And I mean, for me, it's the swimming. And if I don't swim, I try and swim. I definitely swim once a week. I try and swim twice a week. And it really is magical from a mobility point of view, and from making sure that I don't get any kind of swelling. And a lot of people, it used to be thought that weightlifting for people who have had nodes removed should be avoided. And now the research has flipped completely the other way, exactly as you've just said, because without our lymph system, we're relying on our muscles contracting to kind of pump the lymph around our bodies. So by lifting weights, we are increasing that muscle contraction, and therefore it's more effective than just normal day-to-day movements. However, you do need to increase your weightlifting probably more slowly, and progress more slowly in the area where you're affected,
right?
Than somebody who's from like a normal person who hasn't had lymph surgery.
Fair enough. And so I want to go back and just sort of talk a little bit about because you mentioned you're swimming, and it sounds like you're surfing right now, or taking a break from surfing, but you're out on an island somewhere learning to surf. So
I'm learning to surf. I'm definitely not surfing.
So you went from pre-cancer, you were an ultra athlete, and then you were diagnosed with cancer and went through very quickly surgery, radiation, very intensive course of chemo. I believe you're still, if I remember correctly, you're still on some hormone suppression type drugs that have some side effects. But I love your story about the day after, I think it's the day after your first chemo, that you were out walking your neighborhood. You had like a 1K loop for yourself, and your neighbors were staring at you. Could you talk a little bit about why exercise was so important to you? Obviously before cancer, but during cancer. I mean, most people think like, oh, you're going through cancer treatment, you just need to lay on the bed or the sofa and do absolutely nothing. But you didn't take that route.
No. I will never forget the first meeting that I had with my oncologist, who serendipity, brought. I was very, very lucky that I was matched up with. I mean, I make it sound like a dating site, but my surgeon put me in touch with this
swipe left for your favorite surgeon.
Yeah, exactly. But she was like, please go and see him, because I think you two will get on. I'm like, okay. And at my first meeting, I clocked his trainers and he clocked my trainers, and I was like, you're a runner, aren't you? And he was like, yeah, you're a runner, aren't you? And he sat there and he was like, I want you to keep moving. This is going to be really hard, but you need to keep moving. Make sure that you eat lots of protein and just live your life as much as you can. And I mean, I took him at his word, and that's my mission. And I was also very lucky that I had worked for an American trail running company. And one of the other girls who had worked for them is an American ultra runner who had been through breast cancer. And I knew who she was, but I didn't really know her. But my boss at the time put us in touch, and she basically was like a mentor to me. And she told me that she had managed to run, walk, crawl, trot, whatever, move 5K every day. That was her cancer mission. And I'm like, I'm not sure how realistic that will be, but I'm going to move every day. And I made a commitment to myself that I was going to walk every single day, whatever it took. And so I had this loop around the house, and I'm very, very fortunate that, as a place to be ill, I'm very lucky in that I live in the French Alps and it's very beautiful. Straight out the door, we're onto walking trails. And there's kind of a loop around my house that was about 1 kilometre long. Started off on a downhill, then with a steep uphill back to the house, which was quite daunting on some days. And I'm sure you will also appreciate this. When you're not feeling very well, your world shrinks, and you don't want to stray very far from home. And so this particular loop became really important to me because I could go and do one lap of it, and I knew that I could be home if I needed to be within sort of absolute maximum 10-minute walk.
Right.
And so my mission during chemo was I would do 1 lap on the first day after chemo, 2 laps on the second day, 3 laps, and then 4 laps. And then once I'd got to being able to walk 4 laps of this thing, I was like, okay, I can go for a walk somewhere else. I'm obviously feeling better. But, everybody's pattern in terms of how they respond to chemotherapy is different, depends on the chemo drugs that you're taking, and it totally depends on your body. But my pattern was that I would have my chemo infusion, which is quite a long process. And I would get home from the hospital and I would have a window of about 6 hours before I would basically be flat out with my head in a bucket. So I would try and make the most of that 6 hours, and I would go for my little walk. And then the next 2 days I would feel utterly, utterly horrible, but I would make myself do these walks and they made me feel better. And
Good.
it's when you are going through cancer treatment, there is so much that is out of your control. You are not in control of the decisions about your treatment. You don't have control over the timing of things. You don't have control over how your body is responding to the drugs or what your blood tests are going to show. So the only things that you can control are how you look after yourself. And for me, that was movement, what I was eating, how much rest I was getting, trying to manage my stress levels in a very stressful situation, and trying to invest my time, wisely in doing things that brought me joy.
Right. And so all this taking care of yourself is paramount, which is incredible, but you're still having to deal with being a mom. I assume maybe you probably took some time off from work. So how did you go about dealing with that extra stress? And I mean, for me, sometimes the physical was the easier part. It was the mental, getting out of my own head. Was there any best practices beyond just the exercise that you discovered along the way, or that you really leaned into?
I mean, I think being a mum was the hardest and best thing about having cancer, really, because, at the time that I was diagnosed, my kids were 3.5. We've got twins, and, they are incredibly demanding and they needed their mum. And, I still had to read bedtime stories, and I still wanted to,
Sure.
be very present. And at some points during the chemo treatment, the days that I felt really horrible, I would kind of hide away, and my husband would be in charge of looking after the kids. And sometimes it would be like, can you get them out of the house? Because I don't want them to see me like this. But for the most part, I would have chemo on a Thursday. Friday, Saturday, I would feel absolutely dreadful. Sunday, I'd start to pick up. And then my rule to self was Monday morning, get up, put your clothes on, get on with it, take the kids to school, make them breakfast, do the stuff. And it made me just, carry on with life as normally as I possibly could. And I was very fortunate in that, I was I didn't work during my cancer treatment. Some people do, and it's completely a personal choice and very circumstantial. But I wasn't working, so therefore the energy tokens that I had, I was able to spend them on myself and my kids without having to, worry about where does work fit into this picture. But I totally get that's a privileged position to have been in.
Yeah. And shout out to your husband as well, because being a caregiver can be incredibly demanding and taxing as well. So not just your husband, but all the caregivers out there, just a huge shout out and helping us folks who've gone through that cancer treatment, helping us navigate that. So congratulations to the entire family for staying it through.
He was amazing. His role was kind of to focus on the kids. And then I have a very, very close, very amazing friend who created a group of supporters. And I'm incredibly fortunate to be surrounded by a very wonderful group of friends. And they basically created a WhatsApp group and a spreadsheet that I wasn't on. And I wasn't allowed to have visibility on this kind of Steph's helpers thing, but she basically was like, if you need help with something, or you want company, or you just need somebody to come and help you look after the kids or cook dinner or take you to a doctor's appointment or whatever, just let me know and I'll put it out to the group, which was really, really incredible. And it was also very special because it gave me an opportunity to spend time with friends in a way that I, much more slowed down than I normally would, because so much of my life and my social life is centered around exercise. So often when I see my friends, it's like, let's go for a run, or let's go for a bike ride, or let's go and do a gym class together or whatever. So you connect differently. Whereas during cancer treatment, like, for example, I have various friends who work from home, and I would be lying on the sofa feeling dreadful and they would be working from home in my house. But it just kind of, the slow pace was lovely.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wish I could go back there. Not to the cancer treatment, but to the connecting bit.
That's amazing. And so, I know that was invaluable to have that support. Sometimes just having someone in the same room with you, not doing anything, whether they're just working on their laptop or whatever, it just feels good to have that additional presence in the room. So.
No, absolutely. I mean, I had a couple of, I got rehospitalized at one point during chemo, and it was really frightening. And just having another adult in the room who can kind of step in if you don't feel well,
right,
or you just, need somebody else to make a cup of tea or bring you something, Yeah.
Wow. So you made it through this really dark, crummy time, and you came out the other side. And was it during your treatment or after your treatment that you realized that, like, wow, maybe my experience, I can take it and sort of reshape who I am as a fitness and wellness coach?
It was during my treatment, really, in that my oncologist used to kind of parade me around the chemo ward, slightly embarrassingly. But he would be like, look at this girl. She's just been for a 10K run. And, because I had one time in the hospital, because obviously you do, well, not obviously, if you haven't been through cancer, you won't know this, but often you have your chemo and it's on, a 3-week cycle. So you'd have chemo, and then the first week would be pretty rubbish, and then the second week you start to pick up. And for me anyway, my third week, I felt pretty normal, like not firing on all cylinders, a bit run down, kind of ropey, but functioning fairly normally. And in that third week, I remember having a doctor's appointment, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And because our hospital is an hour away, I was like, well, there's no point in me going home in between. So I took my running stuff in, and I was like quizzing the receptionists of like, where can I go for a run from here? And they're like, you're crazy, me with my bald head. And so my oncologist basically kind of would parade me around a little bit and be like, did you know she's just been for a 10K run and blah, 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 blah. And look how strong she looks because she's been going to the gym. And I managed to kind of keep myself in reasonable shape. Like, I was definitely not performing anywhere near the way I normally would prior to cancer, but I did keep moving. And I think it made me realize that me having made this commitment to myself to keep moving and try and keep strong and try and keep fit as much as possible was different from most people's cancer journey. And at that point, I started to look into exercise oncology and what it was. And I started to read up and I started to really understand the power and benefit of exercise for cancer patients. And that then inspired me to add to my qualifications and do a course to become a cancer exercise specialist. But I took a bit of time to do that because one of my other major symptoms was something called chemo brain, which affects a lot of people and isn't talked about a huge amount. And I definitely wasn't prepared for it, where my brain and my memory just went. I couldn't concentrate on anything. I couldn't remember basic things. I mean, I remember taking myself out for a walk, and often, we live fairly rurally, and I don't always take my keys or my phone with me. And I'd gone off for a walk, and we've got a key box outside the door. And I just got back to the door, and I was like, I can't remember the code. And it's like our code that we've had for, as a family for more than a decade. It's totally ingrained, and I was stuck outside the house, like, can't for the life of me remember how to get into my own house. And on another occasion, I was out riding my bike very slowly with a very kind friend of mine who agreed to slow down to my chemo speed. And she looked at me and she was like, "Why are you crying?" And I'm like, "I can't remember your name."
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite full on. So I took a while before I was ready. I went through 4 months of brain training through an organization which does like online training with psychologists, and is aimed specifically at cancer patients to help kind of rebuild your brain power and give you the tools that you need to function again. And I was pretty skeptical to start with, and I also found it absolutely horrific because the exercises, the memory games and stuff that they give you, I couldn't do any of them. But after 4 months, having gone from getting 1 out of 20 right, I was getting 19 out of 20 right. So I was like, oh my God, this has really worked. So signing up to do the cancer exercise course felt like a really big deal, but it actually was incredibly good for me because forcing me to study and apply learning techniques and take notes and be a student again was very, very good for my confidence.
Yeah, sort of almost like next level. Yeah, sort of going from just memorizing flashcards or whatever they had you doing to sort of a real world application and really just sort of building on what you had been going through with your chemo brain therapy. It's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting to me, and this is just me speculating. I have no medical training whatsoever, but talking to people who've had, I did not have to have chemo. I was radiation and surgery only, but know lots of people who've experienced chemo brain. It also, to me, sounds very similar to what some people experience when they talk about that COVID brain or that COVID fog. I have no idea if there's any correlation other than just the similarities, but it's interesting to me that,
I'm sure it's very similar. I mean, I think I'm the only person in the world who has never tested positive for COVID. I mean, I must have had it several times, but you do all the tests. I've never had a positive one. And I've been lucky. As far as I know, I don't have any kind of long COVID symptoms, but I would liken it to baby brain or menopause brain. It's just this kind of impaired cognitive function and slowness and lack of concentration and poor memory. That just is, but you develop coping mechanisms, and I am the queen of lists. I write everything down, and I function completely normally. And as my 4 months of doing the brain training showed, my brain works again. It does get better, but it does, it helps to do the training exercises.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear that you're back to brain strength, normal brain strength.
Yeah.
So you have a site where folks can go to learn more about the services that you offer, and that's cancercoach.me, and they can also follow you at Instagram at that same handle. But maybe you could talk a little bit about a new athlete cancer, someone dealing with, going through their treatments, or maybe they've just finished out their treatments, what does that training protocol look like that's maybe different than just hiring a non-cancer coach?
Sure. Basically, what I offer is completely personalized. So that's kind of the number one thing, which I'm sure lots of coaches would say the same thing, but it takes into consideration not just, who you are and what you're about and what you're into, but what your treatment is, where you're at in terms of your physicality, if you've had surgeries, have you had chemotherapy, have you had radiotherapy, what stage of disease are you at? And I work with people during their treatment and after their treatment. And actually, sometimes I work with people who have been diagnosed but haven't yet started treatment, because there's a lot can be done to prepare. And I work exclusively online. So I have clients all over the world. I've got some in Australia, some in the States, and some in the UK. And it's not just the physical training part of it. Obviously, I create programs and I work closely with the people that I'm working with to put together, a mixture of strength and conditioning, cardiovascular activity tailored to their life and what they're into. But I suppose where the value is my understanding and my lived experience. I think it's fair to say that if you you cannot relate to another cancer patient in the same way if you haven't also been through a similar experience. And a huge part of the relationship is about supporting that person through what they're going through, listening, understanding, adapting, tweaking. And then it's about accountability. So many of us, like, I don't just work with athletes. I do have a couple of clients who are, training for particular events, whether that's a marathon or an ultra or high rocks or whatever it is. But the majority of people that I work with are either fairly new to exercise and who have kind of picked up on the understanding that exercise and making lifestyle changes is super important and is gonna, help them feel well, but also hopefully prevent recurrence of cancer, which is a huge reason why exercise is so important for cancer patients. But for somebody who hasn't yet got the habit ingrained to exercise regularly, then having a coach is super important from an accountability and motivation point of view. And it's interesting because there was a massive study that recently got published in June just gone, so June 25. It was presented at the American Oncology Cancer Oncology ACO, and basically it's a 10-year study that was done globally around exercise and cancer, and it was done in bowel cancer patients, but it applies to many different cancers. And the results of the study show that those patients, so the control group were given information about the importance of exercise for cancer patients, leaflets or website pages or whatever. And the active group were given not just that information, but they were also followed by a coach. And the group over a period of 10 years who had the coach had a 30% lower recurrence rate than the group that were just given the information. So the key seems to be in having the coach, because that's how it's the accountability piece. It's having somebody else tell you what to do. And to make sure that you're doing it correctly, and to make sure that what you're doing is appropriate and safe, and to help you progress with it and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think I would layer onto that sort of that, having a coach tell you what to do. For me, when I have used a coach in the past, it's this, I don't want to let anybody down. And I feel like even though I'm paying this coach and they're getting paid whether I do the work or not, I feel guilty or felt guilty if I didn't do the work, because it's like, oh, I'm letting that coach down and I'm letting myself down. I don't know which was worse, but yeah, I think to me, just having a coach is just invaluable in terms of building that accountability. And some people, it seems like, need it all the time, whereas other people, they can almost ingrain that accountability habit into their exercise and making it part of their lives. But I think it's amazing that you're out there offering a perspective and coaching that a lot of coaches can't provide. And it's great to hear that you have clients. It sounds like you have clients who are coming to you not as athletes, but as people who want to add exercise, add that, component of being more athletic into their life, because they are starting to understand the benefits of that. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, to go back to your previous point, I would say, like, what I normally do is offer 6 sessions, which is over kind of normally 6 months, but it can stretch to 8 months, with blocks of 3 to 4 weeks, because that's kind of how long you need to actually, you do a block of training for a few weeks, and then we shift it up to see the progressions. And some people, about 50% of people, then kind of take all the experience that we've worked on together. They've got lots of different options of workouts and training programs that they can then take that and fly free, and just kind of, that's all they need. They've created the habits themselves, and then the other 50% carry on. And I've got people that I've been working with together for nearly 2 years, who are, amazing, and we have such a strong relationship that's built over time. So it's it's amazing. It's an amazing way to work with people and hopefully help.
Yeah, cool. As I mentioned, I've been following you on Instagram for a while now, and usually when you follow someone on Instagram who has a unique skill set, it seems like all of a sudden Instagram starts filling your feed with more cancer coaches. But that hasn't happened to me. So I'm wondering, there's not a lot of you out there. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of cancer coaches out there, right? So do you have any sense that it's still an area where there's still a deep need for more people like you helping folks?
I mean, there certainly is, given the prevalence of different cancers, isn't there? I mean, there's plenty of room.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, there's lots of different courses out there. So all these people who have, done the courses must be out there. But I guess quite a lot of them are either, certainly on my course, it was a mix of, there were nurses, physiotherapists, and other personal trainers, and academics also on the course that I did. So some of those people will not necessarily have taken that and then run with it just to work with cancer patients. They're including it within, a physiotherapist, right, is not necessarily billing themselves as a cancer exercise specialist. But if they have a cancer patient who walks through their door, they're now armed with additional knowledge. But I mean, it's given that 1 in 6 or 1 in 7 women are likely to get breast cancer in their lifetime, and 1 in 2 people, there is plenty of room for more me's out there. I mean, I suppose inversely, I am connected with and do know of quite a lot of other cancer exercise specialists, and I mean, kind of closed Facebook and WhatsApp groups. So, we are out there, but not enough of us.
Yeah, it would be great to see doctors, and I'm sure there are some doctors that do this, but it would be great to see doctors when they're, treating a patient for cancer, is that they're also prescribing or assigning them a coach, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that they have to, we're assigning you a coach so that you can become the next great Michael Jordan or whatever. But like, we just want you moving and active, because we know that it's going to make your treatments better. It's going to make your recovery probably easier. It's going to make your general outcome of life a lot better as well. And that's obviously going to be different for every person and the type of cancer they have and where they are in terms of severity and treatments. But yeah, maybe we'll get there one day.
I mean, hopefully. Certainly, I don't really know in the US market, but certainly in the European market, there's, as I mentioned before, there's a German organisation called Outdoors Against Cancer, who have been quite heavily involved with the European Union, and their mission is to get the message out there and to scale it up, like exactly as you say, you know, make this accessible for the general population, not just the limited number of private clients that I can possibly manage. And then in the UK, I'm aware of a charity called Move Against Cancer with exactly the same mission. You know, it's about just starting where you are as a cancer patient and just moving. And it's consistency and regularity is so much more important than exactly what you do. You know, it's exercise generally is often massively overcomplicated, and people get overwhelmed with what should I be doing, what can I do, all that kind of thing. And it's not that it doesn't matter, but it kind of doesn't matter. Just move. Doesn't matter.
Exactly. Yeah. Find something that you enjoy doing. It always kills me when people are like, "Oh, I hate running," and then I'm like, "Well, then why do you run?" you know, find something. I ran track and cross country in high school many eons ago, and I don't really enjoy it that much anymore. But I love riding my bike. I love hiking, which is, you know, has kind of like running, but it's not running. It's at a slower pace. So I think you just got to find what clicks for you, right? Whether it's, you know, pickleball. Seems like everybody loves pickleball now. Is pickleball huge in Europe? It's huge here.
Not as much as, what's the other one? Paddle. What's the difference between pickleball and paddle?
I don't know.
Not played either.
I've heard about paddle. I'm sure somebody in the comments can tell us the difference between paddle and pickleball. But yeah, pickleball is huge here, and I've taken it up. I'm playing with a group of friends, and all I know is that my knees and ankles hurt when I'm done.
I mean, that's kind of a good sign. It means you work them, but, you know.
Well, I figure, you know, cycling, I'm just doing this all the time. With the paddle ball, I get the back and forth. So maybe that is, or excuse me, pickleball, I get the back and forth. So yeah, and I don't know here in the U.S. I'm sure that there are doctors that are encouraging, or I know that there are doctors encouraging people to exercise, whether they have cancer or not. Maybe some are saying get a coach or an instructor. I do know that my doctors encouraged me to keep riding my bike and staying active. And like you, I had to start really small baby steps. With walks around the neighborhood, and eventually graduated back up to the bicycle. So, yeah. Well, what about what's next for you? You're learning to surf, which we talked about before we officially began the podcast. Is anything else on the horizon for you?
So my mission for this past year was a triathlon. I've done a few triathlons, and I had never really kind of fully embraced it, and I'd done a few like Olympic distance triathlons, and then I decided that I wanted to do a half Ironman equivalent. It wasn't a branded one, but so the last year was all about training for that, and I got myself a coach, which was amazing because it kind of got me fit in a way and forced me to do the sessions that I didn't really want to do, particularly
someone
the swimming
telling you
ones
what
that
to do,
I
right?
hate. Somebody telling me what to do and how to structure it, even though I know how to do that myself. It's very hard to kind of force it on yourself, and the good girl in me and the people pleaser is like, oh, he's going to be so pleased with me, I've done a great session. But I did that triathlon in September, and it was literally amazing. I had an incredible time, and I was very, very happy to win my age group, which was a surprise and not really what I set out to do, but it was, you know, it was a really good experience, and it was a really good way to show that I can still push myself, but also that I can manage myself. You know, I managed my pace, and I managed the ride, and I ate well, and, you know, it wasn't a perfectly executed race, but it was good. So I would like to do another one. I have a very good friend who also is having a big birthday this year, who's an ex GB triathlete, so we might do something together. And then I also so I've been running cancer retreats in the French Alps with a colleague who's based in the UK who does a similar role to me. So there are more me's out there. And she is very into strength training, which is not my natural habitat, but I also am very aware that this is what I need to improve on. So we have decided to do a high rocks together. So I'm going to do a high rocks in March.
Can you explain? I have a general idea of what that is, but can you explain that to what it's high? Is it high rocks or hydrox? Right, it's hydrox. Can you explain what that is?
High rocks without the D.
Oh, no D.
It's a race series. It's indoor racing, and it's a combination of running and weights, and it's very, very intense. And I think I may have bitten off more than I can chew, but we're going to see. I'm hoping that I am actually physically capable of doing some of the exercises, because I don't know that I'm strong enough, but we're going to give it a go. Basically, you run a kilometer and then you do there's 8 different stations, so it's like burpees, lunges, ski erg, row, and then there's a really heavy push, like a sled push, and a pull, and then a thing called wall balls, where you basically have to do like a squat and throw a weighted ball against a target. And it's hard and fast. But I am reassured to hear that it's essentially a running race with some exercises in between. So I'm hoping my running background is going to stand me in good stead for this thing. But yeah, that's my kind of project for next year is high rocks in March, and then a triathlon, and try and kind of improve on previous times, because I used to run a lot and my heart will always be in trail running. And, you know, there's something about running in the mountains that is just incredibly special to me. But unfortunately, a combination of cancer treatment and the side effects of hormone therapy mean that my body can't tolerate running long distances anymore.
Yeah, I think I saw an article when I was doing a little research for this conversation about, it says something like you get like this debilitating foot pain at times when you're running long distances. Is that still the case then? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I mean, I basically have to manage it. So it's a side effect of the hormone therapy is joint pain. And the hormone therapy can also have an effect on your soft tissues, and it can shorten and make your tendons more fragile. So I wound up with like double Achilles tendonitis, which I kind of ignored for a bit. And then I basically have done permanent damage to my feet by not resting as much as I should have done. So do as I say, not as I do. And so I can still run. I can still hold a pace over a short distance, but I can't run long distances anymore. And, you know, it's a niggly thing that niggles away in the background some of the time. Most of the time I'm pain free, but if it starts flaring up, I have to pay attention to that and, you know, stop running for a bit.
So that'll probably keep you at the half Ironman distance versus the full Ironman.
Yeah, I'm not going to full Ironman.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, as a working mum, I don't have time to train for
fair enough
something that long. You know, it was on the limit, training to half Ironman distance and juggling the kids and work and blah blah blah. You know, it needs to fit with your lifestyle.
For sure. I was looking through my notes, because as we're getting close to the end of our conversation, I always have what I call my pop quiz section. Okay. And for whatever reason, my pop quiz notes did not transfer over. Let me try refreshing and see if it magically appears. Questions. So the first pop quiz question is, I have a theme song for the podcast, but the musical genre changes based off of my guest preference. So what musical genre would you like your theme song to be in?
Okay, I'm a 90s girl. I just had my 50th birthday, and the soundtrack to that is all like 90s indie.
Okay. 90s indie rock. We got it. Or is that 90s indie rock? Is that good?
Yep, that'll do.
Okay, perfect. See, you're 1 for 1, 100% on this pop quiz right now. So you're out on a long ride, probably not a long run, because we already talked about that. And you've run out of fuel, so you have to stop at a convenience store for a snack. What is your go-to snack?
Mint choc chip ice cream.
Wow, you just gonna take that on the bike? I love you. Didn't even pause on that one. Yeah.
If I'm on the bike and I'm eating it on the bike, then I'm probably shoveling Haribo down. But my fantasy food when I'm running out of steam is always like, you know, in where I live, there are often like amazing ice cream shops with, you know, loads of different flavors, and it's all kind of artisan.
Yeah.
Healthy ice cream, as much as ice cream can be healthy. And my thought process is always, right, I'm allowed 2 balls of ice cream. What 2 flavors am I going to have? And that's what keeps me going. So yeah.
Love it. Love it. Love it. We've talked a little bit just about how much you've told us how much you love running in the Alps, but I'm just wondering if there's a favorite race or event out there that you would recommend that people should do at some point. It could be road, or it could be running or riding, or a combination of both.
I'm based near Chamonix in the French Alps, which is kind of trail running mecca. And the most famous race is the UTMB, which is a lap around Mont Blanc, which is Western Europe's highest mountain. And it starts in our hometown of Chamonix, and it goes into over the mountains into Italy, and then over some more mountains into Switzerland, and back over some more mountains and back into France. And it's 160 something kilometers long, 100 miles basically, with like nearly 10,000 meters of ascent. Totally not my bag. It's far too far for me. It is an incredible event to watch and be part of, and the athletes that do it are really amazing. But actually, my favorite local race is part of the Mont Blanc Marathon series, which takes place in June every year. And my ultimate favorite race is actually a relatively short one. It's called the Cross du Mont Blanc. And it's 23 kilometers. It's hard and fast. It's basically an uphill half marathon. It's pretty brutal, but the terrain's incredible. The views are just breathtaking, and it's the atmosphere. I mean, a lot of these big races have become commercialized, and they've kind of moved away from the grassroots of what trail running is to me. But I feel like the cross still has its local roots and a lot of local competitors, and that's my absolute favorite race. And it's also achievable in terms of, you know, you don't have to completely change your life or give up work in order to train for it.
Right. I know, like, a lot of the big events here in the United States, they sell out quickly, or there's a lottery system. Is that the same for that race and event? Yeah.
You have to apply pretty early. Like I've got a place in it for this year. 2026. And I ran it last year as well, because they have like a priority ballot for locals. I think the entries are open now. I'm not exactly sure how it works. There are still races out there that still retain that kind of real local feeling, where you can apply fairly close to the race day, and, you know, the winners win a cheese and a bottle of wine. And it's, you know, it doesn't have big name sponsors, and, you know, I love those races, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. The local small races, the only problem is that when they're that good, or when they're really good, they usually end up getting bigger and bigger. There's an event here in Salida, Colorado, called the Vapor Trail 125. It's a mountain bike, and they actually limit it to about 125 people. And so it's starting to get to the point where you have to get up at the crack of dawn with your finger on the enter button on your computer so that you can get a spot. But I think they're limited by the number. Just the Forest Service doesn't let them have that many people out on the trail at once. So it might not ever get huge, but it's an amazing event, and it's just, I love it. So I get where you're coming from. One last question for you is, and I'm going to try to find some links for these events that you're mentioning, and we'll put them in the show notes for folks, as well as your links for your website. But what's the one place that you would like to run or ride that you've yet to do so?
Oh gosh. I have run in the Himalayas. I went and did the Everest Marathon over 10 years ago. I would like to go back and do some more running in the mountains there. And I'd also like to do some more running in South Africa. My mum is originally South African. And there's some really beautiful landscapes that I would love to explore.
Cool.
But that'll take a bit of research.
Cool. All right. Well, Steph, I just really want to thank you for taking some time out from your birthday celebration vacation, and happy
Thank
birthday
you.
again. In the show notes, I'll have links for your website, cancercoach.me, as well as a link to your Instagram account. So anybody who would like to reach out to Steph, you can do that through her website. You can also learn a little bit more about her and some of the services that she offers. And I was going through the website today as well. And one of the things that I appreciate about you, Steph, is you don't claim to know everything. But
Yeah.
at the end of your website, you have a ton of different resources and other folks that you work with, like dietitians, that I think, anybody who's going through cancer or has gone through cancer and is looking to elevate their health, I think you would be an incredible person to connect with. And again, thank you for taking the time to share with us today.
Oh, no, you're so welcome. It's been a real pleasure to have this chat. And also, just to kind of add, I obviously recognise that having a coach costs money that not everybody can afford, especially during cancer treatment when,
Sure.
It can be financially stressful. And I do often just chat to people, so if you want to reach out and just kind of have a chat and maybe get some tips on what you can be doing or what might help you, then do feel free to just ping me a message either through like a DM through Instagram or via my website.
Yeah, that's amazing, and thank you for letting people know that. Yeah, and they can just follow you on Instagram. You have all sorts of great tips and motivation there on your Instagram account as well.
Oh no, thank you.
Yeah. Steph, thank you so much. And like I said, enjoy your birthday vacation. And I hope we continue to connect and chat now and then. So thank you again.
Take care, Jay. Thank you very much.